On the broadcast tonight, full readiness. President Park Geun-hye says reckless provocations by North Korea cannot be ruled out at this point and calls on the government to be prepared for all contingencies. New power landscape as Kim Jong-un moves to cement his power and as North Korea commemorates the second anniversary of former leader Kim Jong-il's death. Analysts are keeping a close eye on the new landscape of power under the young leader. And rail workers strike. The railway strike in this country looks set to go the long haul. The prosecution seeks arrest warrants for 10 union members, while an accident involving a passenger on a subway train is bound to stir up the already heated public reaction to the strike. This is Early Edition at 6. It is 6 a.m. in Santiago, 11 a.m. in Pretoria, and 6 on a Monday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. South Korea preparing for potential provocations from north. That's our starting point for today.
President Park Geun-hye convened a security meeting with related ministers and senior secretaries on this Monday to discuss the current situation in the north and to lay out how the South Korean government should respond to any contingencies.
The Korean leader has identified the security situation on the Korean peninsula as being grave and is calling on the government to be on full alert. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju starts us off.
The recent execution of Chang Song-taek was once regarded as the second most powerful figure in North Korea, startled the world, not to mention South Korea. As a follow-up to an emergency security policy meeting on Friday, the day Chang's execution was announced by Pyongyang state-run media, President Park held a meeting Monday afternoon with her foreign affairs and security-related ministers and senior secretaries. Senior Presidential Secretary for Public Relations Lee Jung-hyun told reporters that President Park believes the current political and security situation on the Korean peninsula is very severe. She has ordered her top government officials to fully prepare for any contingencies and provide assurance to the public so they can continue on with their daily routines without worry. President Park asked related ministries to keep a close eye on the situation unfolding in the north and maintain a strong security posture. In particular, she urged the military to closely cooperate with U.S. forces and share information with neighboring nations and the international community. Earlier in the day, during a meeting with her senior secretaries, President Park warned of a possible provocation.
최근 북한에서 전개되고 있는 일련의 사태를 보면 향후 북한 정세가 어떤 방향으로 진행이 될지 불투명하고 무모한 도발과 같은 돌발 사태도 배제할 수가 없는 상황입니다.
She called for nationwide efforts to prepare for any possibilities, considering what she called the gravity and unpredictability of the status quo. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Now, marking the second anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, the nation's military held a mass gathering to pledge allegiance to his son and current leader Kim Jong-un. The state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Monday that the North Korean military swore loyalty to, quote, their one and only Supreme Commander Kim Jong-un and vowed to safeguard him in accordance with Kim Jong-il's last words.
The gathering took place at the Kumsusan Memorial Palace in Pyongyang, where bodies of the state founder Kim Il-sung and his son Kim Jong-il lie in state. Military Politburo Chief Choi Ryong-hae and Armed Forces Minister Chang Jong-nam were among those in attendance.
Now, this week marks the 2-year anniversary of North Korean ruler Kim Jong-un taking power.
What has he done over the last 2 years, and what kinds of changes can we expect in his leadership style? For answers, we now connect to our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee at the Arirang News Center.
Now, Sung-hee, let's start from the very beginning. We traveled back in time to 2011, and let's talk about Kim Jong-un's leadership style when he first came into power.
Good evening, guys. With the death of his father, former North Korean ruler Kim Jong-il on December 17, 2011, there was a lot that fell into the young Kim's lap. The 27-year-old Kim Jong-un inherited a nuclear arsenal, 1.2 million troops, $6 trillion worth of natural resources, and a population of 24 million impoverished people. The young leader is believed to have received much less training compared to his father, who trained for years before assuming power. So at the beginning of his leadership, we saw Kim being accompanied by his uncle Chang Song-taek, who was regarded as his guardian and the second in command. But of course, that was until last week when Chang was executed on allegations of treason.
Well, Chang Song-taek was removed just days before Kim's 2-year anniversary in power. We don't know if this was planned, but it certainly seems like. Does this signal a change in North Korea's power structure?
Yes, Daniel, experts say the execution of Chang signals a shift in North Korea's power structure to a one-man leadership system, meaning that Kim is making sure that he is the one and only ruler of the regime. And while the outside world was shocked by Chang's removal, North Korea watchers say it was a calculated move and very much an expected one.
A dictator, if he's prudent and capable, he has to be careful, and he will take measures to remove those that are very high in the hierarchy because they pose the greatest challenge or the greatest potential challenge to his rule.
So, Sung-hee, experts believe that the execution of Chang Song-taek was in fact a calculated move as opposed to an emotional one by a young, hot-tempered Kim, perhaps.
Yes, Chang wasn't the only man to fall under Kim Jong-un's watch. 5 out of 7 senior officials that accompanied the young Kim during his father's funeral have now been removed, which means he has been dismissing figures from his father's generation. Now this to bolster his own inner circle. If you take a look at the chart here, the number of times that Chang accompanied the North Korean leader at public events halved this year from the year earlier, whereas Choi Ryong-hae, the young Kim's new protege, has been appearing a lot more. Choi was appointed by Kim as the Politburo chief in April last year, and he has been seen next to the North Korean leader since Chang's execution.
So clearly it's less of a coincidence and more of a systematic approach by Kim Jong-un. But will he be successful in this attempt to tighten his grip on power?
Well, Daniel, experts remain divided on how the young Kim will fare after the execution of Chang, depending on whether they see the removal as a calculated move or one that arose from an internal power struggle.
It's amazing the amount of time and effort in meetings and appointments and things that were done across the board in terms of ideology, in terms of institutions and personnel appointments and control. That I don't see any reason why it should not be successful.
It shows how corrupted the North Korean leadership is and that there are many internal conflicts due to the forces who oppose change. In the long term, this may provoke the North Korean citizens.
But for the time being, it's business as usual for the young leader. Kim Jong-un has made a string of public appearances since the execution of his uncle, visiting the construction site for the Masikryong ski resort and the Korean People's Army Design Institute. Now this week, he will also be welcoming retired American basketball player Dennis Rodman for the 3rd time this year and allowing an international delegation to tour the Kaesong Industrial Complex this week.
All right, that was our Hwang Sung-hee, Unification Ministry correspondent, live on the 2-year anniversary of Kim Jong-un's rise to power. Thank you, Sung-hee, for that. Meanwhile, a senior North Korean official says the execution of leader Kim Jong-un's uncle will not have a negative effect on the country's economic policies.
As our Kim Young-gil reports, it looks like North Korea will push ahead with attracting foreign investment through the development of new economic zones.
Yoon Young-seok, a senior member of the State Economic Development Committee, told the Associated Press on Sunday that Pyongyang's trade goals remain the same despite Chang Song-taek's execution.
Even though Chang Song-taek's group caused great harm to our economy, there will be no change at all in the economic policy of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It's just the same as before.
Last month, North Korea announced plans to create special economic zones in each province to provide incentives for foreign tourism and investment. Yoon said Chang's removal would instead speed up progress on the economic front because he was a threat to national unity. He said Chang's execution should not scare away Chinese investment, which is crucial to the success of the zones.
Our State Economic Development Committee welcomes investment and business from any country to take part in the work of developing our new economic zones.
However, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said Sunday that Chang's execution is an ominous sign of the instability and danger that exists in North Korea. He said Kim Jong-un's decision to execute his uncle underscores the importance of a well-coordinated international effort to reduce nuclear threats from the country. Meanwhile, Kim Kyung-hee, Chang Song-taek's wife and the aunt of Kim Jong-un, appears to have survived the purge and execution of her husband, as her name was included on a leadership list in the North state-run media over the weekend. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2. In domestic politics, with the National Intelligence Service's alleged interference in domestic politics as a backdrop, a special parliamentary committee to reform the agency held public hearings on this Monday. Here's Arirang News' Park Ji-won with this report.
The Special Parliamentary Committee to reform the National Intelligence Agency held public hearings on Monday. A group of experts was invited to share their views on how to make the agency more politically neutral and strengthen its original mission of information gathering. The experts, however, showed opposing perspectives about the direction and scope of reforms. Experts invited by the ruling Saenuri Party said reducing the agency's budget and investigative functions domestically would have a negative impact on security, considering North Korea still sends their spies to South Korea and the National Intelligence Agency often arrests them. Experts recommended by the main opposition Democratic Party said the NIS should strengthen its information gathering activities on North Korea and other countries, and that its investigative rights at home be limited to ensure it doesn't interfere in domestic political affairs. The two parties also came up with differing opinions about recent developments in North Korea and the role of the state spy agency. The ruling Saenuri Party said since the agency did a good job collecting information on the purge of Chang Song-taek, a cautious approach should be taken regarding the scope of reforms.
Now is when the parliament needs bipartisan cooperation. At this important time, both diplomatically and security-wise, we should avoid internal conflicts.
The opposition Democratic Party said reforms should center on improving the agency's information gathering capacity, mainly with regard to North Korea.
The reform ideas by the Democratic Party are intended to strengthen the NIS, not to weaken it.
The National Intelligence Service is embroiled in allegations that it meddled in last year's presidential election. The Special Parliamentary Committee's public hearings will continue through Tuesday. From Wednesday, the committee will begin deliberating on the revision of the law that defines the role of the National Intelligence Service. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Korea has chosen two U.S. companies, Boeing and Kaman Aerospace Corporation, to manufacture air-to-ground bombs guided by the Global Positioning System for its F-15K and KF-16 fighter jets. Seoul's Defense Acquisition Program Administration said Monday that it has selected Boeing to make the wing kits and Kaman to make the detonators. GPS-guided bombs have a high degree of accuracy and are designed to fly directly to their targets, no matter the weather. An official at the DAPA said GPS-guided bombs will help enhance the military's capability of launching precision attacks.
A railway strike in the nation entered its second week on Monday, and while the walkout had mostly only affected freight train operations during the week, it's now starting to impact passenger train services, leaving some commuters in the lurch. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The railway strike that started 1 week ago has now begun to have a direct effect on commuters in the capital city. The Korea Railroad Corporation, or Korail, reduced operations of Subway Line 3 in Seoul by 15% on Monday. The line is operated by both Korail and Seoul Metro, which also runs the first and fourth line, signaling the possibility of further scale-downs in operations in the coming days. The unions representing Seoul Metro and the Korean railway workers have already notified their employers that they plan to go on a strike starting Wednesday. Meanwhile, Korail has said it'll reduce number of KTX passenger trains by 12% starting Tuesday. The railway strike entered its second week on Monday, with police announcing that they will seek arrest warrant for 10 union members for failing to appear for questioning. They will be taken into custody if and when the warrants are issued. An 84-year-old woman was killed in southern Seoul on Sunday evening after her leg got stuck between train doors while the subway was still moving. A trainee was running the subway at the time of the accident, one of hundreds of substitutes that are filling in for the nearly 8,000 workers currently on strike. They are demanding that the government reverse its plan to set up a new rail operator, which they claim is the first step towards privatization. The government and police call it an illegal strike and that they'll follow the letter of the law in dealing with it. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A nut that may come loose, literally. That's the reason why GM Korea is recalling more than 1,800 of its automobiles over faulty steering. Korea's transportation ministry says the recall affects Damas minivans and Labo mini trucks that were manufactured between May and June of this year. Owners will be able to get repairs free of charge at GM Korea's service centers. GM Korea had announced last week that it would stop producing the Damas and Labo models starting next year, after failing to come to an agreement over safety regulations with the transportation ministry back in November.
The Korean stock market emerged as one of Asia's most popular safe havens this past summer when fears over the outlook for U.S. monetary policy sparked a major sell-off. But as our Yurian reports, that trend has reversed in recent weeks.
It was less than 2 months ago when Korean stocks enjoyed their longest ever foreign buying spree and hit an 18-month high. But the trend has reversed in recent weeks as the Kospi dropped by nearly 5%. In fact, apart from the late summer months, the Kospi did not do so well this year compared to the United States or Japan, countries Korea usually falls in line with. Since January, the S&P 500 rose by 21%, the Nikkei 225 by 44%, while the Kospi fell by 3%. Experts say speculations about the timing of the U.S. stimulus tapering is not the only factor weighing down the markets.
Korea did not carry out strong restructuring measures as Japan or the United States did following the global financial crisis. Instead, it continued to create a bubble, raising companies' credit rating as they benefited from the strengthening yen.
The lack of strong restructuring measures, he says, has now taken a toll on local companies and led them to turn in fledgling report cards. Of the 254 local companies that announced their earnings in the third quarter, only a third of them posted higher than expected profits. This compares to around 2/3, both in the U.S. and Japan. While pundits are calling for a new and stronger growth engine and appropriate policies to support them in the long run, it seems the fate of the Korean stock market will mostly depend on global economic conditions in the coming months. Experts predict that the reversal of the United States bond buying program will force developing countries to begin restructuring by middle of next year. That's also when Korean stocks are expected to pick up as they benefit from improving economic conditions of developing countries. Yurian, Arirang News.
Over in Chile, Michelle Bachelet has again been elected president of that country, giving her a second term in the nation's top office. The center-leftist was elected by a landslide on Sunday with over 62% of the vote against her conservative rival, Evelyn Matthey, who came in with just 38%. Bachelet led Chile from 2006 to 2010 as the nation's first female president, and she was a popular leader with an approval rating of over 80% by the time her term ended. She was not able to run for a second consecutive term, which is prohibited by the Constitution. Bachelet is being praised for having developed in the country's democracy and for stabilizing economic growth. She has promised 50 reforms in her first 100 days after her inauguration in March. Moving on to other stories, LED lighting may appear to be a bit on the expensive side when installed, but it can save you energy and therefore money in the long run. With another electricity shortage feared this winter in Korea, a local association is promoting LED lighting as the way of the future. Our Son Jung-in has more.
This is a parking garage of an apartment complex in Gwangju, where the LED lights automatically turn on or become brighter when a person or a car nears the area. The management of the complex says it set them back nearly $48,000 to install the lights, but it's an investment they expect to get back.
We are now saving up to 72% or almost $4,600 from the average total electricity bill of $6,300 every month.
With the effectiveness of the eco-friendly lighting coming into light, the Korea Association for Photonics Industry Development, or KAPID, is actively pushing government agencies and the private sector to embrace the LED industry and turn Gwangju and other cities into LED cities.
For outdoor public spaces, the city of Gwangju is plotting to replace more than 10% of the street lamps with LED lights within next year and continue the substitution extensively.
KAPID, which has a goal to achieve a 60% penetration rate of LED lighting by the year 2020, is also working on helping Korea's 800 LED-related companies make inroads into other markets in Europe and Southeast Asia. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, for some health-related news, we've always known that drinking too much is not good for your health. But now we have more solid evidence that even consuming alcohol in small amounts can dramatically impact how your brain controls the way you think and feel. Well, that's according to a newly released study by a group of Korean researchers who have been closely studying how drinking alcohol affects activity in the brain and also the consequences it may have on your mental health. Polly reports.
Drinking responsibly with friends and colleagues can be an enjoyable experience. Unfortunately, having one too many drinks can lead to actions or words you may soon regret. The loss in control is already a well-known reaction anecdotally. However, scientists are still searching for the exact neurological reason as to why alcohol affects us in this way. A research team here in Korea sought to answer this question by monitoring the brain waves of two subject groups, those who drank orange juice and those who drank juice containing alcohol. Measurements were recorded using an electroencephalogram to analyze brain activity. A side-by-side comparison shows that those who consumed alcohol had reduced activity in their cerebral cortex, which is made up of neural tissue that connects the right and left sides of the brain. The study's lead author, Dr. Lee Jae-won from Gangnan Ulji Hospital, says that this disconnect in brain function shows a possible link to decreased rational decision-making.
If you drink alcohol, there is decreased communication between regions in the brain. I use the EEG method to determine the degree of communication between brain regions. This technology allows us to measure brain activity differently than other conventional methods.
The study was published last month in the scientific journal Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research. The results show promise in establishing a new diagnostic tool in identifying various addictions and mental disorders. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Time now to get a check on the weather conditions. For that, we go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, I hear heavy snowfall is in the forecast for some regions of this country.
That's right, Kanyang. A heavy snowfall watch was issued in Gangwon-do province as well as mountains of Jeju and Gyeongsang-do province.
So how much snow are those regions expecting, Bo-kyung?
Well, Daniel, it looks like the mountains in Gangwon-do will get about 20 centimeters of snow, whereas the mountains in Jeju are forecast to get about 1 to 5 centimeters. Now, in terms of the temperatures, it looks like we're going to get back to our seasonal averages tomorrow. And other than that, a dry weather warning is still in effect in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces. So if you're in those areas, please be sure to keep yourselves hydrated. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -4 degrees with a high of 5. Meanwhile, Daegu and Busan remain at 6 and 9 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, Jeju reaches 6 degrees in the morning before hitting 8 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang peak at 6 and -4 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Bo-kyung. That's all from us. Thank you for watching and hope you rest well so you can be ready to attack the day with renewed determination tomorrow. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.